Alright, next we're going to look at the connective tissues, and there are quite a few different connective tissues. And before we get into it in particular, let's look at a schematic of what they all share in common. This is a very busy slide here, there's a lot going on, and what we are trying to show is the different features that all these different connective tissues share in common, but maybe in just different proportions. So as you can see on this particular slide, there's a macrophage here, there is a lymphocyte, there's a mast cell, a neutrophil. These are all cells of the immune system, and they play different roles. And these cells, sometimes they're just found within the connective tissue, just kind of lying in wait for something to come along. Sometimes they are specifically found there, and that's the home that they make. One of the most important cells here is the fibroblast, and the fibroblast is the one that is going to make a lot of this extracellular matrix that's over here. So the reason that a connective tissue can be a connective tissue is because it has this thread-like material that's found on the inside. And one in particular is the collagen fiber. The collagen fiber is a type of protein that arranges itself in such a way that you can make structural components very strong, and it can also withstand tension and things like that. We also have elastic fibers. They're a bit smaller and they tend to coil, and what that does is it gives us the ability then to stretch something and have it go back to its original shape. We also have this reticular fiber. And reticular fiber is going to be found in some of these connective tissues, and really what it does is it creates a framework. It's almost going to make these tissues almost have like a kind of skeleton on the inside that cells can just wrap themselves around and make a home on. And then you can say that there's a capillary running through. Some of these tissues will have capillaries running through. Some of them actually do not have the ability for capillaries to run through. So let's see our first type. First type of connective tissue that we're looking at is a lot like the diagram that we just looked at. This is the areolar tissue. And the areolar tissue is a loose connective tissue. We say it's loose because we have the fibroblasts here, and you can see their nuclei scattered throughout this particular image. And what the fibroblasts are doing is they're making all these collagen fibers. That's keeping everything in place. We also see some elastic fibers. And the reason we call this a loose connective tissue is because there's going to be a lot of space that's filled with water. And when you have this space filled with water, that's going to give this tissue the ability to bend and fold and move in different directions without breaking. So what you've got here is a gel-like matrix, and that gel-like matrix is being created by those fibroblasts. And what this particular tissue does is it wraps around things and it cushions them within the body. And I can't really give you one example of this because really what's going to happen is as we go through AMP1 and AMP2, we're going to find that with each particular organ that we talk about, probably the first thing that we're going to talk about is the connective tissue, kind of like saran wrap that's on the outside. So you might be familiar with this, like if you've, the next time you eat meat, like a steak or a chicken, you'll find that you have to cut through this very kind of dense connective tissue in order to get to the meat on the inside. Well, that is the areolar tissue that's on the outside, and that's very common throughout the body. All right, the next type of tissue that we're going to look at here is the adipose tissue. And adipose tissue is very similar to areolar tissue, with the big difference being that we have all the same stuff. It's just that now we have these large vacuoles where we have fat being placed. And fat is always going to serve the same purpose within the body. Fat is a stored form of energy. But we get this added benefit from having fat in various places because fat has the ability to insulate heat, it has the ability to cushion the body, so we kind of get these added benefits of placing this stored energy in certain areas. And that's the role that adipose tissue plays. The next tissue that we have here is reticular tissue. And the big thing with these reticular tissues is that you have this reticular fiber. So here you can see a cross-section of the spleen, and you can see that the reticular fibers are running through this particular picture, almost like, to me they look kind of like the branches of a tree. And then you have all these white blood cells that are kind of making a home. So that's what reticular fibers do, is reticular fibers kind of help cells, almost like a jungle gym. They just all kind of hang out there. And what that does is it gives the tissue this very soft, almost sponge-like consistency to it. So that's how reticular tissue is going to particularly be different, is that we want these cells, these white blood cells, to make a home, and that's what the reticular fibers are allowing them to do. So this is what we're going to see in the spleen. We're also going to see this in lymph nodes. The next type of tissue that we have here is different from what we saw in the previous types of connective tissue, because now we are looking at dense connective tissue. And it's dense because now we're not allowing as much room for water in between. And with a dense connective tissue, you can see in this particular diagram that all of these collagen fibers are really packed together, and they're running in parallel directions. And with dense, regular connective tissue, what we want to do is we want to connect usually bone to muscle or bone to bone. And the advantage of having these collagen fibers running in this parallel format is that now when we're trying to do something like attach the biceps brachii to the top of the shoulder here, by having these threads move or having them arranged in a parallel fashion, we're going to be better at withstanding the forces of the contracting muscle, and this is going to be best for dealing with that tension. Now, with the next one that we're going to see, it's a very similar type of tissue, but now instead of everything running in a parallel format, it's all kind of scattered around. So as a result, we call this dense irregular, with really the only difference being that now instead of everything running in this parallel fashion, it's kind of crisscrossing. And there's times when you want things to run in parallel because you know exactly what direction the force that you're dealing with is going to come in. But then there's other parts of the body where it doesn't always know which direction, or especially in the fibrous joint capsule of your shoulder here. This is one of the advantages of having this type of tissue, because the shoulder has the ability to move in all different planes. So the reason that we want these fibers to run in different directions is because as this fibrous capsule is being challenged to move in all these different planes, we have to withstand forces in different directions. So crisscrossing it is going to strengthen this type of particular tissue, and this is going to help out with that particular freely moving joint. All right, the next type of dense connective tissue that we're looking at is the hyaline cartilage. And hyaline cartilage is going to have so many of these collagen fibers that are so densely packed together that under a microscope it almost looks like it has this glassy appearance to it. And with hyaline cartilage, we're generally going to have the same thing. What is it attempting to do is sometimes it protects, sometimes it reinforces. It's playing a very similar role as what bone does, but in certain areas where you need it to be a bit more flexible. And this is why the costal cartilage is such a good example. You want your rib cage to be able to protect your thorax, so that's the location of your heart and your lungs. But when you breathe, you're actually deforming the shape of your chest. And so that subtle change of shape is going to require that the tissue in this area be able to bend. Now, bone doesn't bend that well. However, costal cartilage, which is very similar, is going to change shape just enough that it's going to allow you to deform the shape of your chest. Another form of dense connective tissue is elastic tissue, and just as the name implies, what we have is a lot of elastic tissue. So the reason that we're going to have this particular tissue in certain areas of the body is because this is a part of the body where we're going to have constant stretch. And a great example of this is found in the diagram to the bottom left here, where we see the aorta coming off of the heart. Now the heart is going to be pumping a large volume of blood into the aorta, and the aorta is going to stretch almost like a balloon. It's going to take in all of this blood that's being pushed into it. And then as the pressure increases in this area, it is forced to then move through the circuit throughout the body. And the only way that we can withstand those enormous forces that are created by the left ventricle as blood is being forced into this area is to have a large concentration of elastic fibers on the inside of these, and we call them elastic blood vessels. We also have elastic cartilage, which is very rare. Elastic cartilage is only found in 2 parts of the body. And as the name implies, this is a type of tissue that it's a connective tissue but very elastic. So it has a great deal of elastic fibers in this area. We're only going to find this in 2 spots. We're going to find it in the pinna of the ear. So the pinna is this funnel-shaped region that helps you bring in sound waves into your acoustic meatus. And then we're also going to find this type of tissue in the epiglottis. The epiglottis is the flap that covers your trachea when you swallow. All right, last but not least, we have fibrocartilage, and fibrocartilage is kind of an intermediate between hyaline cartilage and also dense regular connective tissue, because we want to perform both actions here. We want to reinforce a structure and create a shape. But at the same time, we want to have everything running in a parallel type of fashion so that we can withstand the different forces that we're dealing with. And what that is going to provide for us with fibrocartilage is a type of tissue that has the ability to have a very high tensile strength. So what it's going to do is it's going to act as a shock absorber throughout the body. And a very good example is here shown on the bottom left. We see the intervertebral discs. The intervertebral discs are found between our vertebrae, and what they do is these discs are going to get larger and larger as we descend down the spinal column, because the amount of pressure and force that's going to be pushed down upon these is going to get larger and larger. We also see this type of tissue found in the pubic symphysis, for example. We see it in the menisci of the knee. Basically anywhere that we need some type of shock absorber, that's where we're going to find fibrocartilage.